You bought American because that is what your father did and his father before him. Then somewhere around 80,000 miles, it started bleeding you dry. The dealer looked confused. The mechanic shook his head. Neither one was going to tell you the truth. That car was never designed to last. The breakdown was not an accident. It was a business decision made in a boardroom before you signed your name. Here are 10 American cars built to fail and the companies that knew it from day one. Number 1. Chevrolet Cobalt. 2005 to 2010. The Cobalt was everywhere in the mid-200s. Chevy sold millions of them to hardworking Americans who wanted an affordable, no-nonsense compact car. It looked clean, the price was right, and the Chevy name still meant something back then. That trust was misplaced. The Cobalt was built around a 2.2L Ecotec engine that had one fatal weakness. A poorly designed intake manifold gasket that started leaking around 70,000 miles. Once it leaked, coolant crept into places coolant should never be. Overheating followed, then warped heads, then engine failure. A head gasket repair on a good day ran $1,500. If you caught it late, you were looking at a full engine replacement at $4,000 on a car worth maybe $3,500. Chevy knew. The TSBs were out there, but instead of a recall, they offered extended warranties to quiet the lawsuits, leaving anyone who bought used holding the bag completely alone. And here's the part that should make you angry. The fix itself was not even expensive to engineer properly. Chevy chose cheaper materials to save a few dollars per unit at the factory. You paid for that decision every time you opened your wallet at the repair shop. If you are shopping for a used Cobalt right now because the price looks attractive, factor in this: you're not buying a car at a discount. You are buying someone else's repair bill at a discount. And that bill is coming whether you are ready for it or not. The bottom line is simple. There are better used cars in the same price range that will not drain your savings account 6 months after you drive them home. The Cobalt is cheap for a reason, and that reason has nothing to do with the market and everything to do with what is under the hood. Number 2, Ford Mustang V6 2005 to 2010. Now, before Mustang fans come after me, hear me out. The V8 Mustangs from this era are mostly fine. It is the base V6 that belongs on this list. What they got was a 4.0 LSH V6 with a timing chain that stretched like taffy. That chain starts slapping against the guide. Most owners ignored it because the car still ran. That was a mistake. It bent valves, and the repair bill hit $3,000 to $4,500. On a car worth maybe $5,000 at the time, Ford quietly updated the engine design for later models, but never addressed the existing ones on the road. They sold you the dream of American muscle and gave you a ticking clock instead. The coolest part is that a lot of these V6 Mustangs were bought by people in their 40s and 50s who finally had a little money to spend on something fun. They deserved better than a disposable engine wrapped in a pony car badge. If you hear that, that sound is the engine telling you exactly what kind of repair bill is waiting around the corner. One of them does it, they are not wrong. But that is not a reason to buy it. That is the reason to run. Number 3, Chrysler 200 2011 to 2017. Chrysler had a real chance with and people believed it. Families across the Midwest and South bought these in droves, proud to be buying domestic. The problem was underneath all that styling sat a 9-speed automatic transmission that was an absolute disaster. But Chrysler's implementation was uniquely terrible. It hunted for gears constantly. It hesitated at highway speeds. It lurched during low-speed maneuvers. Exactly the kind of driving real people do every single day. Chrysler pushed out software update after software update, just like Jeep did with their Cherokee. Nothing fixed it. When the transmission gave up mechanically, replacement cost between $4,000 and $6,000. Chrysler discontinued the 200 in 2017, but not before. If you see one of these at a used car lot with a clean interior and low miles, walk away. Somebody got tired of fixing it, and that is exactly why it is for sale. The transmission problems on the 200 are so well documented that even seasoned, the math simply does not work in your favor. Number 4, GMC Acadia 2007 to 2016. The Acadia was GM's answer to the minivan. Families on road trips bought these. What GM did not advertise was that the 3.6 LV6 These engines burn through oil between changes without a single drop showing up on your garage floor. No leak, no smoke. The oil just disappeared internally. If you were not checking your dipstick every 1,000 miles, which most people are not, timing chain failure followed that. A full engine replacement on an Acadia ran $6,000 to $9,000. GM acknowledged the issue, but fought every owner individually rather than issuing a meaningful recall. They called it normal consumption. Losing a quart every 1,000 miles is not normal. It is a design flaw they chose not to fix. Changed their oil every 5,000 miles, like the manual said, and still ended up with a seized engine sitting in a dealer parking lot wondering what went wrong. If you already own one of these, start checking that oil level every single time you fill up the gas tank. It is not optional on this vehicle. Dodge finally built a car for regular Americans that had some personality. Sporty styling, competitive pricing, and it sat right in the sweet spot of the used car market. Young families bought them as second cars. They seemed like solid value. They were not. The 2.44L four-cylinder, paired with the 4-speed automatic transmission, was a combination so poorly matched, it felt like two engineers from different departments never spoke to each other. The transmission ran hot because it was unsized for. Heat is the enemy of automatic transmissions. It degrades fluid, burns clutch packs, and warps valve bodies. By 90,000 miles. A rebuild cost $2,500 to $3,500. The car was worth about the same. And here's the part that really stings. Meaningfully improving it. They knew what it was doing. They kept selling it anyway. It would have cost Dodge maybe $80 per vehicle. Do yourself a favor. If a used Avenger comes across your radar at a price that seems too good to pass up, ask yourself why it is priced that way. The transmission is either already slipping or it is about to start. And once it starts slipping, the clock is running. Every mile you drive it in that condition is another mile of damage accumulating inside a transmission that was already on borrowed time the day it left the factory. There's no fixing cheap, there's only paying for it later. MKZ 2013 to 2020, Ford tried hard to make Lincoln relevant again with the MKZ. Beautiful interior, comfortable ride, loaded with technology. Older. Buyers especially loved it. They wanted domestic luxury without paying European import prices. The problem is that Lincoln borrowed Ford's 2.00L EcoBoost engine and stuffed it into a luxury car where it was expected to perform like a premium powertrain. But unlike a Mustang, where you might hear a rattle and have some warning, the MKZ's chain guides failed suddenly, sometimes causing the chain to jump, timing without warning. Repair costs started at $3,500 and climbed to $7,000 if the valves got bent. On a used MKZ selling for $14,000, that is a brutal hit. These were buyers in their 50s and 60s who saved up for something special, something they were proud to park in the driveway. They deserved a car that was built to last as long as their loyalty to the brand. If your father drove a Taurus in the 1990s and thought he was getting the same dependable car in a newer body, Ford was counting on exactly that assumption to make. The sale, the MKZ looked like the future of American luxury. Under the hood, it was the same compromised engineering in a nicer suit. What makes this particularly unforgivable is that Lincoln buyers are not impulse shoppers. These are people who researched, compared, and made a deliberate choice to invest in an American luxury brand. They were not looking for a bargain. They were looking for quality. Ford took that trust, wrapped a flawed engine in leather and wood trim, and sent them home with a ticking clock disguised as a status symbol. If this video is saving you money, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button, drop a comment below, telling me which of these cars you have owned or seen fail. Subscribe if you have not already, and ring that notification bell so you never miss one of these. Alright, let's keep going because the next 4 are ones a lot of you probably have in the driveway right now. Number 7. Chevrolet Traverse, 2009 to 2017. The Traverse was built for the American family. 3 rows, plenty of cargo room, and priced below foreign competition. GM sold a massive number of these to exactly the kind of buyer who needs a reliable vehicle most. Parents, grandparents, people hauling grandkids to school. The same 3.6 LV6 from the Acadia showed up here with the same oil consumption nightmare. But the Traverse added its own special problem. a 6-speed automatic transmission that developed a shudder right around the 80,000 miles mark. The root cause was torque converter failure combined with worn clutch packs, and the fix was never cheap. Transmission replacement ran $4,500 to $6,500. When you combine that with the near-certain engine oil consumption issue that could destroy your motor if you were not vigilant, you had a vehicle that cost more to keep running than most people paid for it. Used. GM sold this vehicle for 8 years. They knew both problems existed. They kept the parts expensive and the repair window narrow. Classic disposable design. What makes it worse is that this was not a bargain basement vehicle. People stretched their budgets for the Traverse because they needed the space and trusted the name. GM rewarded that trust with an engine and transmission combination that was essentially designed to fail right after the warranty ran out. Before you buy a used Traverse, have an independent mechanic pull the oil cap and check the dipstick in front of you. If that oil smells like fuel or looks like chocolate milk, you already have your answer. Put the keys down and keep walking. And if the seller tells you the oil consumption is minor or that they just topped it off, that is not reassurance. That is a confession. A healthy engine does not need to be topped off between oil changes. The Traverse does, and it has from the day it rolled off the assembly line. Number 8. Ford Taurus 2010 to 2019. The Taurus name means something to Americans over 50. It was one of the best-selling cars in American history. Ford brought it back for a new generation, and people were happy to see it. Familiar name, full-size comfort. American-made. What Ford delivered was a car loaded with expensive, unrepayable technology that started failing just outside warranty coverage. The My Ford Touch infotainment system, the centerpiece of the interior, was glitchy from day one and failed completely by $80,000. Replacement was a dealer-only fix. Running $1,500 to $2,500. The 3.5 LV6 developed water pump failures. But here's the twist. Ford mounted the water pump inside the engine, driven by the timing chain. When the water pump failed, it often took the timing chain with it. That repair cost $3,000 to $5,000. This was a known design flaw. Ford carried over from the Flex and Edge. They built it the same way in the Taurus. Anyway, the people who got hurt were loyal Ford buyers in their 50s and 60s, who bought this car because of what the Taurus name used to stand for. Ford traded on that legacy and delivered something that did not deserve it. If your father drove a Taurus in the 1990s and thought he was getting the same dependable car in a newer body, Ford was counting on exactly that assumption to make the sale. The internal water pump design alone should have been a deal breaker at the engineering stage. Every mechanic who has pulled one of these apart will tell you the same thing. Whoever approved that design knew exactly what they were doing, and it was not building you a car that would last. The coolant system on these vehicles also had a separate issue. Plastic coolant crossover tubes that cracked and failed around the same mileage as the water pump. So even if you caught the water pump early and paid for the repair, you could find yourself back in the shop weeks later with coolant pouring onto the ground from a different location entirely. Ford built multiple failure points into the same cooling system on the same car. That is not coincidence. That is a pattern. Number 9. Jeep Compass. 2007 to 2016, Jeep sold the Compass as an entry point into American off-road heritage. The name, the badge, the rugged marketing. It spoke directly to Americans who grew up watching Jeeps climb mountains. What they actually built was a front-wheel drive car dressed up in Jeep clothing, and they powered it with a CVT transmission in some trims that was even worse than Nissan's infamous unit. The Compass CVT was built by Jatco, the same supplier Nissan used, but with less refinement and even less warranty support. Failures started showing up at 50,000 miles. Shuddering, overheating, complete loss of drive, stranded on the highway, no warning. Replacement cost $4,000 to $5,500. The car was worth maybe $6,000 used. But the betrayal here goes deeper than the transmission. Jeep marketed this to people who genuinely believed they were buying into American toughness and capability. They were buying a disposable economy car with a Jeep sticker on it. That is not just bad engineering. That is false advertising dressed up in patriotism. A real Jeep is supposed to get you home no matter what. The Compass left people stranded in parking lots. There is no version of that story where the manufacturer did not know exactly what they were selling. If you are considering a first generation, Compass because the price is low and the Jeep name feels reassuring. Remember this. The badge on the hood does not change what is underneath it, and what is underneath it was never built to last. The four-wheel drive versions were not much better either. The power transfer unit, the small gearbox that sends power to the rear wheels, failed regularly and cost $2,000 to $3,000 to replace. So whether you bought the front-wheel drive version or paid extra for the four-wheel drive capability that Jeep's marketing promised, you were losing either way. Number 10. Cadillac ATS. 2013 to 2019. Cadillac built the ATS to prove that American luxury could compete directly with the BMW 3 Series. It was bold, it was beautiful, and older American buyers who had watched Cadillac slide into irrelevance were genuinely excited. Finally, a Cadillac that felt world-class. The base 2.5L four-cylinder was so gutless Cadillac barely sold any of them. Most buyers stepped up to the 2.00L turbocharged 4, which felt responsive and premium until around 60,000 to 70,000 miles, when the carbon buildup on the intake valves became severe enough to cause misfires, rough idle, and power loss. Direct injection engines need periodic intake valve cleaning. It is a known maintenance item, but on the ATS, the engine packaging made it nearly impossible without significant labor. The cleaning process alone ran $800 to $1,200. Skip it and the engine ran progressively worse until it needed headwork at $4,000 plus. Add in a dual-clutch automatic transmission and some trims that had the same jerking and hesitation problems as the Ford Focus PowerShift, and you had a car that felt premium for 60,000 miles and then became an expensive burden. Cadillac wanted a world-class sports sedan. What they built was a world-class lesson in how not to execute one. The saddest part is that Cadillac had the engineering talent to do it right. They made a choice to cut corners on the very components that determine whether a car lasts 80,000, or 200,000, and buyers who believed in the American luxury comeback paid the price for that choice every single time. A used ATS might look like the deal of the century sitting on a lot at $12,000. Just remember, the previous owner knew exactly why they were selling it, and so does the dealer. The only person in that transaction who does not know is you until it is too late. On top of everything else, the ATS had a well-documented electrical gremlin problem. Sensors failing. Warning lights cycling on and off for no clear reason. Infotainment systems freezing mid-drive. Diagnosing electrical issues at a Cadillac dealer starts at $200 just to plug in the scanner. Fixing them can run into the thousands. It is death by zero cuts on a car that was supposed to represent American excellence. Every single car on this list was sold to hardworking Americans with promises the manufacturers never intended to keep. Know what you're buying before you buy it. And if a deal looks too good to be true on any of these, it probably is because someone else already learned that lesson the hard way. If this video helped you, subscribe and watch the next video on screen right now. We will see you there.